Frank Sinatra was more than just a singer or an actor. He was the chairman of the board, the definitive architect of 20th century cool. He lived his life in a world of sharp suits, late-night recording sessions, and high-stakes romance, surrounded by the most stunning women of the Hollywood Golden Age. But for a man as meticulous as Sinatra, someone who would re-record a song 40 times just to get the bend of a single note right, beauty was never just about a pretty face. To Frank, beauty was a professional discipline. It was class. He looked for a specific kind of moxie, a blend of intellectual independence, emotional depth, and a refusal to be intimidated by his own towering, sometimes volatile, presence. He didn't care for the manufactured beauty of the studio system. He wanted a woman who could hold a drink, hold a conversation, and hold her own in a room full of the world's most powerful men. He sought the dame who was also a lady. Today, we explore the 5 women who met the Sinatra standard, the few who didn't just capture his gaze, but earned his lifelong respect. 1. Ava Gardner, the angel with a dirty face. If there is a singular woman who represents the love of Sinatra's life, it is Ava Gardner. She was the woman who brought the chairman to his knees and, in many ways, was the catalyst for his transformation from a Bobby Soxer idol to the brooding, sophisticated crooner of the In the Wee Small Hours era. Frank once famously remarked, "She's the only woman who ever really got under my skin." To Frank, Ava wasn't just beautiful. She was an elemental force. Ava Gardner possessed a raw, earthy magnetism that made every other woman in the room seem like a cardboard cutout. She had high, sculpted cheekbones, emerald green eyes that could pivot from warmth to ice in a heartbeat, and a husky, late-night voice that matched Sinatra's own baritone. But what Frank found most breathtaking about Ava wasn't the symmetry of her face, it was her grit. She grew up in the rural South, and she never lost that edge. She could drink most men under the table. She swore with the creativity of a dockworker when she was angry, and she never, ever backed down from a confrontation. For a man used to getting his own way, Ava's refusal to be tamed was the ultimate aphrodisiac. Their relationship was a storm of passion, public brawls, and deep, spiritual connection. They were 2 people who were essentially the same person in different bodies, proud, lonely, and fiercely independent. Frank often described her beauty as dangerous, like looking at a solar eclipse. You knew it could blind you, but you couldn't look away. Even decades after their divorce, Frank kept a photo of Ava on his dressing room mirror. To him, she was the quintessential woman because she was entirely herself, regardless of the cost. She was the angel with a dainty face, a beauty rooted in the soil and the soul rather than the makeup chair. 2. Grace Kelly, the fire beneath the ice. If Ava Gardner was the fire, Grace Kelly was the ice. But Sinatra, ever the expert on human nature, knew that the Ice Queen persona was merely a sophisticated mask. Frank worked with Grace on the set of High Society in 1956, and he was instantly captivated by a type of beauty that was the polar opposite of Ava's ruggedness, the patrician ideal. While Hollywood was pushing blonde bombshells like Marilyn Monroe, Grace Kelly offered a reserved, aristocratic elegance that Sinatra found deeply impressive. Frank famously called her the princess long before she actually became the Princess of Monaco. He was mesmerized by her luminescent skin and the way she seemed to float rather than walk. But what truly fascinated Sinatra was the fire he sensed beneath the surface. He loved that she was a lady in public but possessed a sharp, dry wit and a mischievous streak in private. He once remarked that Grace was the only woman who could make a simple string of pearls look more expensive than $1 million diamond necklace. Sinatra respected her discipline. He saw her as a professional peer, someone who understood that beauty was a tool to be used with precision. In a world of loud personalities and desperate attention seekers, Grace's quiet, confident beauty was a relief to him. She represented the class that Sinatra spent his entire life trying to emulate. He viewed her as a masterpiece of form, a woman whose beauty was balanced by a deep, intellectual dignity. He remained one of her most devoted admirers and friends, often visiting her in Monaco, always viewing her as the gold standard for what a woman of stature should be. 3. Lauren Bacall, the look and the intellectual equal. Lauren Bacall, or Betty, as Frank and their inner circle called her, occupied a unique position in Sinatra's life. She was a widow of his mentor and best friend, Humphrey Bogart, and after Bogey's passing, she and Frank shared an intense, high-profile romance. Sinatra found Bacall's beauty to be architectural. She wasn't a traditional pretty girl. She had a long, expressive face, a heavy brow, and a gaze so intense it was famously dubbed the Look. For Frank, Bacall's beauty was inseparable from her toughness. She was a woman who could hold her own in the Rat Pack, the den mother to a group of the world's most difficult and talented men. Frank loved her rasping, low-register voice, which he felt was the female equivalent of his own vocal style. He found her beauty most potent when she was challenging him. She was intellectually formidable, and Sinatra, a man who was easily bored by yes-men, found her mind as attractive as her face. He once noted that Betty didn't just enter a room. She commandeered it. She didn't rely on frills, lace, or the girly tropes of the era. She wore tailored suits and slacks, projecting a masculine kind of strength that Frank found incredibly feminine. Their relationship was a collision of two alphas, and while it eventually ended because Bacall wanted a commitment that Frank wasn't ready to give, he never lost his admiration for her. To him, she represented New York beauty. Sharp, sophisticated, unsentimental, and completely unafraid to speak her mind. She was a woman of substance in a town of shadows. 4. Lana Turner, the masterpiece of glamour. In the 1940s, Lana Turner was the sweater girl, the ultimate symbol of Hollywood glamour. Frank was a young man at the height of his Sinatra fame when he first became infatuated with Lana. To him, Lana represented the purest form of the Hollywood dream. She had a face that seemed to have been sculpted specifically for Technicolor, platinum hair, perfect symmetry, and a glow that seemed to emanate from within. Sinatra found Lana beautiful because she was the embodiment of star power. She was a woman who understood the business of beauty. She never appeared in public looking anything less than perfect. Frank, who was famously obsessive about his own appearance, polishing his shoes until they shone like mirrors and changing his shirt 3 times a day, respected Lana's commitment to the look. He found her beauty to be orchestrated in the best possible way. It was a performance that she gave to the world every single day. But beyond the makeup and the furs, Frank saw Lana as a survivor. Like him, she had come from a humble, difficult background and fought her way to the top of a brutal industry. 5. Elizabeth Taylor, the masterpiece of Violet. Finally, there was Elizabeth Taylor. While Frank and Elizabeth never had a long-term romance, they were close friends and frequent companions for decades. Frank often cited Elizabeth as the most technically perfect woman he had ever seen. He was obsessed with her eyes, those legendary violet eyes that seemed to change color depending on her mood or the light of the room. Sinatra, a man who appreciated the finer things in life, from the best scotch to the most expensive jewelry, viewed Elizabeth Taylor like a rare piece of art. He found her beauty to be undeniable. You could be a fan of her movies or not, but you couldn't argue with her face. He admired her lavishness, the way she wore jewels, the way she laughed, and the way she lived her life on an operatic scale.